3 days after my grandfather's funeral, I opened an email that changed my life forever. It contained one sentence that made my blood run cold. Your inheritance has already been claimed. The problem? I had never claimed it. And according to the documents, someone in my own family had. Everyone says money changes people. They're wrong. Money doesn't change people. It reveals who they really are. I grew up believing my parents loved me more than anything. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. My dad owned a construction company, my mom worked part-time at a local school, and they always reminded me how much they had sacrificed to give me a better life. I believed every word. Until one email destroyed everything. What I discovered over the next few months wasn't just financial betrayal. It was 24 years of carefully planned lies. And by the time it was over, my own parents were standing in a courtroom begging for mercy. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning. My name is Ethan. I'm 24 years old. Growing up, the most important person in my life wasn't my father. It was my grandfather. His name was Richard. He wasn't the kind of grandfather who spoiled kids with toys or candy. Instead, he taught me things. How to fish. How to fix an old engine. How to negotiate. How to recognize when someone was lying. He used to tell me something I'll never forget. The people closest to you can either become your greatest blessing or your biggest mistake. At the time, I thought he was talking about business. Years later, I realized he was talking about family. Richard built a real estate company from nothing. He started with one small rental house in the early 1980s. Over 40 years, he turned it into dozens of apartment buildings, commercial properties, farmland, and investment accounts. People in our town respected him. Some feared him. But everyone knew one thing. Richard never trusted easily. Especially when it came to money. Oddly enough, he trusted me. That trust would become the very reason my parents turned against me. Every Saturday while my friends played video games, I'd spend time with Grandpa. He'd spread property maps across his kitchen table. He'd explain mortgages, interest rates, investments, rental income, taxes. I was only 14. Most of it went over my head. But I listened. Because he always made me feel important. He treated me like an adult. Not like a child. My parents hated that. Especially my dad. He'd joke. Dad likes Ethan more than his own son. Everyone laughed. Except Grandpa. He never laughed. Looking back, I think he knew exactly what was coming. About a year before he died, Grandpa invited me to lunch. It seemed normal. Until dessert arrived. He suddenly became serious. Ethan, he said quietly. I need you to promise me something. I nodded. If anything ever happens to me, never sign anything your parents hand you without talking to my lawyer first. I laughed. I honestly thought he was joking. My parents. He simply nodded. I mean it. Asked why. He looked out the restaurant window for nearly a minute. Then he whispered. Because not everyone loves you for the reasons you think. I wanted to ask more. But he changed the subject immediately. That conversation stayed in my head for months. Then eventually, life got busy. College, work, friends. I forgot all about it. That turned out to be the biggest mistake of my life. Because exactly 11 months later, Grandpa died unexpectedly. And everything changed. The funeral was packed. Business partners, neighbors, old friends, family members I'd never even met. Everyone talked about what an incredible man he was. My father cried harder than anyone. At least, that's what it looked like. Now I know something else. Those weren't tears of grief. They were tears of anticipation. Because he knew something I didn't. Something worth millions of dollars. 3 days later, my parents invited me over for dinner. Everything felt strangely cheerful. Too cheerful. Mom made my favorite meal. Dad opened an expensive bottle of wine. They kept asking about work. About college. About my future. Then Dad casually slid a stack of papers across the table. Just some estate paperwork. He smiled. Nothing important. I reached for a pen. Then, Grandpa's voice echoed inside my head. Never sign anything your parents hand you. I froze. Dad noticed. You okay? Yeah. I'll read it first. His smile disappeared. It isn't necessary. I'd still like to read it. Mom suddenly interrupted. Honey, your father has already handled everything. Handled everything? What exactly did that mean? I picked up the papers. Most of the pages were legal language. But one sentence caught my attention. The beneficiary voluntarily transfers all future financial interest. I looked up. What financial interest? Silence. Dad grabbed the papers. You're overthinking it. It's standard. Then he changed the subject. I didn't sign. Not that night. And I think that decision ruined their entire plan. The next morning, while checking my inbox before work, I noticed an email I'd somehow missed. It was from my grandfather's attorney. The subject line read, "Final notice, estate distribution." I clicked it. Within seconds, I realized someone had already taken everything my grandfather left me. And according to the official records, the signature authorizing it was mine. I stared at my phone for nearly a full minute. Maybe it was spam. Maybe someone had made a mistake. My hands were shaking as I opened the email. The first paragraph was simple. Dear Ethan Carter, this is our final attempt to contact you regarding the distribution of Richard Carter's estate. Final attempt? I had never received a first one. I kept reading. According to the signed authorization forms received 6 weeks ago, all assets designated to your inheritance trust have already been transferred. My stomach dropped. Transferred? To? The email continued. If you did not personally authorize these transactions, please contact our office immediately. I read that sentence 5 times. Then I looked at the attachment. It was a scanned legal document. At the bottom, it was my name. And my signature. Except, it wasn't my signature. Someone had copied it almost perfectly. Almost. Whoever forged it made one tiny mistake. I always wrote my middle initial. The signature on the document didn't. That one missing letter proved I had never signed it. Someone had stolen my identity. Suddenly, my grandfather's warning finally made sense. But I still had no idea the forgery was only the beginning. The real betrayal was hiding inside the lawyer's office. I called the number immediately. A receptionist answered. Mr. Harrison's office. My name is Ethan Carter. There was silence. Then she asked, could you hold for just a moment? Seconds later, an older man picked up. Ethan. His voice sounded relieved. I've been trying to reach you for weeks. We thought you were avoiding us. I never got any letters. Another pause. What address have you been living at? I gave him my apartment address. He sighed. That's not where we mailed them. What address did you use? He read it aloud. It was my parents' house. The house I had moved out of nearly 2 years earlier. Every legal notice, every certified letter, every document had been sent there. And I had never seen a single one. Mr. Harrison asked me to come to his office immediately. I drove there in complete silence. The entire trip. I kept hoping there was some reasonable explanation. Maybe a paperwork mistake. Maybe an administrative error. Anything. I said. The moment I sat down, Mr. Harrison placed a thick file on the table. I need you to answer one question honestly. I nodded. Did you personally sign these documents? He opened the folder. Inside were dozens of papers. Power of attorney. Property transfers. Trust releases. Bank authorizations. Every single one carried my name. Every single one had a forged signature. No. I barely managed to whisper. I've never seen any of these. Mr. Harrison slowly leaned back in his chair. I was afraid you'd say that. Then he told me something that made everything even worse. The signatures weren't enough to steal my inheritance. Someone else had helped them. Every legal document required witnesses. Normally, that protected people from fraud. Mr. Harrison pointed to 2 names. A notary. And a witness. The notary's license number was real. The witness was real too. Both had confirmed that I was physically present when the documents were signed. Except, I wasn't. On the date listed, I was nearly 600 miles away. I pulled out my phone. I still had photos from that weekend. I had been attending a college leadership conference. There were dozens of pictures, videos, hotel receipts, even GPS records. There was no possible way I could have been sitting in a lawyer's office signing documents. Someone had lied under oath. Which meant this wasn't just family drama anymore. This was a crime. Mr. Harrison opened another folder. This, he said quietly, is what your grandfather actually left you. He slid a handwritten letter across the desk. It was addressed to me. The handwriting was unmistakable. My grandfather's. Ethan. If you're reading this, it means I'm gone. I spent years deciding what to do with everything I built. I chose you because you value people more than money. I hope I'm right. I could barely breathe. Mr. Harrison waited until I finished reading. Then he pushed another document toward me. It listed every asset inside the trust. Apartment buildings, commercial properties, investment accounts, stocks, land, cash reserves. Estimated total value, $3.2 million. I thought it had to be a typo. I'd never seen that much money in my life. Neither had my parents. Till now. Then Mr. Harrison said 6 words that changed the entire investigation. Your parents knew about this years ago. Apparently. 3 years before Grandpa died. He had invited my parents to his office. He told them exactly how his estate would be divided. He also explained something very important. None of the money, none of the property, would belong to them. Everything would go into a trust under my name. According to Mr. Harrison, my father exploded. He argued for nearly an hour. He claimed it wasn't fair, that he deserved control, that I was too young. Grandpa refused. From that day forward, their relationship never recovered. Suddenly, everything started making sense. The fake smiles, the fake tears, the pressure to sign papers. They hadn't been grieving after the funeral. They had been racing against the clock. Because the longer I remained unaware, the easier it would be to erase every trace. Before I left, Mr. Harrison handed me copies of every forged document. Take these. You'll need them. As I flipped through the pages, one receipt fell onto the floor. It wasn't supposed to be there. It was from a private storage facility. The rental agreement listed only one name. My father's. The date? Just 2 days after my grandfather died. Mr. Harrison frowned. I don't remember putting that in the file. Neither of us knew what was inside that storage unit. But somehow, we both knew it mattered. A lot. That night, I drove past the storage facility just to take a look. I expected it to be empty. I saw my father's truck parked outside. And as I watched from across the street, he unlocked the storage unit, looked over both shoulders, and pulled out a large black box marked R. Carter, Original Documents. At that moment I realized my parents weren't just hiding money. They were hiding evidence. And I was about to find out how far they were willing to go to keep their secret buried. I stayed across the street with my headlights off. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear the engine. My father's truck sat outside Unit 117. The door was halfway open. From where I was parked I couldn't see inside. But I could see him. He carried one black file box to the truck. Then another. Then a small metal lockbox. He looked around every few seconds. Not like someone organizing old belongings. Like someone making sure nobody was watching. After nearly 20 minutes he closed the storage unit and drove away. I waited another 5 minutes before pulling into the facility. The gate was still open. I slowly drove past Unit 117. The door was locked. But something caught my eye. A single sheet of paper was sticking out from beneath the door. Just enough for the corner to be visible. I looked around. No cameras pointed directly at the unit. I reached down and carefully pulled it free. It was a photocopy of a property transfer agreement. Across the top someone had stamped it in bright red ink. Void. Why would someone keep a voided document? And more importantly, what had replaced it? The answer came less than 12 hours later. When someone broke into my apartment. The next morning I returned home after meeting with Mr. Harrison. At first, everything looked normal. Until I unlocked my apartment door. The deadbolt had fresh scratches around it. Nothing looked stolen. My television was still there. My laptop was untouched. My wallet was sitting exactly where I'd left it. But my desk drawer, the one containing copies of my grandfather's estate documents, was open. Every paper inside was gone. Whoever had entered my apartment hadn't come for money. They came for evidence. Fortunately, I had already emailed digital copies to myself before leaving the lawyer's office. The originals were gone. But the proof wasn't. Someone had underestimated me. My apartment building had security cameras covering every entrance. I immediately asked the property manager if we could review the footage. He hesitated. Normally, only police could request recordings. But after hearing about the break-in, he agreed. We skipped to the previous evening. At exactly 8:17 p.m., a man wearing a baseball cap entered the building. His face stayed hidden most of the time. But just before stepping into the elevator, he looked directly toward the camera. I froze. I knew him. It wasn't my father. It wasn't a stranger. It was my father's accountant. A man named Daniel Brooks. He had handled my family's taxes for over 15 years. Why would an accountant break into my apartment? Unless he wasn't just handling taxes. Maybe he had helped hide something much bigger. That's when I realized this wasn't a family secret anymore. It was a conspiracy. And every answer led to another person. That evening, Mr. Harrison called again. Ethan, I found something your grandfather specifically instructed me to give you. I drove back to his office immediately. He handed me a small brass key. This opens a private safe deposit box. He told me to wait until I knew you were in danger. In danger. Mr. Harrison nodded. He expected people to come looking for his documents. My grandfather knew. He knew someone might try to steal everything after he died. He had planned for it. Inside the envelope with the key, there was one handwritten note. Only one sentence. Trust documents can be forged. Memories can't. I had no idea what it meant. Not yet. The following morning, I visited the bank. The manager escorted me into the underground vault. Rows of steel boxes lined the walls. She unlocked one, then left me alone. There were several folders. Old photographs. A flash drive. A leather journal. And one sealed envelope marked, "Open only if my wishes are challenged." My hands trembled as I opened it. The first page was a signed letter. Thing stopped me cold. It was a certified family tree. Attached beside it were copies of birth certificates, marriage licenses, DNA verification reports. At the bottom, my grandfather had written, "If anyone claims Ethan was never meant to inherit, these records prove otherwise." Why would he need DNA records? Who was planning to question my identity? I got my answer that very same afternoon. And it was even worse than I imagined. I returned home to find my phone exploding with messages. Friends, neighbors, even distant relatives. Everyone was asking the same question. Is it true? True. I opened social media. My father had posted a long emotional message. According to him, I was trying to steal money that never belonged to me. He claimed I had manipulated my elderly grandfather during his final years. He accused me of forging documents. Then came the biggest lie of all. Ethan is not Richard's biological grandson. He tricked our family for financial gain. I couldn't believe what I was reading. Thousands of people had already shared the post. Comments poured in, calling me greedy, a fraud, a criminal. Within hours, my reputation was collapsing. They weren't just trying to take my inheritance anymore. They were trying to destroy my life. Fortunately, my grandfather had anticipated that exact accusation. And he had left proof. I inserted the flash drive into my laptop. There were dozens of files. Business records. Property deeds. Financial statements. Then I noticed a folder named Insurance. It was a single video. Recorded less than 2 months before my grandfather died. I clicked play. He looked directly into the camera. Older. Weaker. But completely clear-minded. He smiled. If you're watching this, someone ignored my instructions. I've spent years preparing for that possibility. He paused. Then said something that made my entire body go numb. My own son believes everything I built belongs to him. It doesn't. And if you're seeing this, it means he finally made his move. I couldn't breathe. Grandpa knew exactly who would betray him. He had been documenting everything. For years. Just as I finished watching the video, someone knocked on my apartment door. 3 slow knocks. I looked through the peephole. 2 police officers were standing outside. One of them asked, "Mr. Ethan Carter? We need you to come with us." I had no idea why. But somehow, my parents had made the first legal move. And this time, they weren't just accusing me. They were trying to have me arrested. The 2 officers didn't move from the doorway. They just stood there, calm, professional. Like this was routine. But nothing about my life felt routine anymore. Mr. Ethan Carter, the taller one repeated, checking a file on his tablet. We need you to come with us for questioning regarding financial fraud and identity misrepresentation. Identity misrepresentation. That phrase hit harder than anything else. Because I already knew who planted it. My father. Behind the officer's shoulder, I noticed something else. A third man standing near the stairwell. Not in uniform. Suit. Dark tie. Watching me like he already knew the outcome. And when our eyes met, he looked away first. That's when I understood. This wasn't just police procedure. This was coordinated. I want a lawyer, I said immediately. The taller officer nodded slightly. You have the right to one. But before I could even step forward, the second officer added, actually, your family's legal representative is already on the way. My stomach dropped. Family legal representative. Not mine. 10 minutes later, I was sitting in my own living room while they waited. Like I was already detained without handcuffs. And then, the door opened again. Daniel Brooks walked in. My father's accountant. Except now he wasn't just an accountant. He was acting like a legal authority. He placed a folder on my table. Ethan, he said quietly, this doesn't have to escalate further. I stared at him. You broke into my apartment. He didn't deny it. Instead he said something worse. I was retrieving company property. Company property. That was the first time I realized what they were doing. They weren't just accusing me. They were reclassifying my entire inheritance as something that never legally belonged to me. One of the officers stepped aside to take a call. That's when my phone vibrated again. A message from an unknown number. Just one line. Do not go with them. Check the bank file. Now. My grandfather's bank file. The sealed envelope. My hands were shaking as I remembered the flash drive. I looked at Daniel. He was watching me too carefully. Too calm. Like he was waiting for me to comply. I need to get my jacket, I said. The officer nodded. But Daniel stood up immediately. I'll go with you. That was the mistake. Because now he was too involved. I walked into my bedroom. Closed the door. And locked it. Then I pulled out my laptop. Opened the flash drive again. And found something I missed before. A hidden folder. Labeled, If legal action is initiated against Ethan. My breath stopped. I clicked it. Inside was a scanned court affidavit. Signed by my grandfather. Not just a will. A legal override document. And one paragraph that changed everything. If Ethan is ever accused of fraud, the following individuals are to be investigated immediately for coordinated asset diversion. Below it, 3 names. My father, Daniel Brooks. And a board member from my grandfather's company. This wasn't a family dispute. It was structured fraud. I opened the door again. Fully. Everyone looked at me. Even the officers. I'm ready, I said. Daniel smirked slightly. But I wasn't looking at him. I was looking at the officer holding the tablet. I just want one thing clarified before I go. The officer raised an eyebrow. What's that? I pointed at Daniel. Is he the one who requested my detention? Silence. Pause. Then the officer checked his screen again. And his expression changed. Just slightly. Actually, he said slowly, that request came from a private legal filing. I nodded. That's what I thought. Because I knew something they didn't. Private filings still required verification. And verification leaves a trail. As they escorted me out, I caught one last glimpse of Daniel. He wasn't smiling anymore. He was confused. That meant something had gone wrong for them. For the first time. At the police station, I was placed in a waiting room alone. No handcuffs. No charges yet. Just silence. Then a detective entered. Older. Tired eyes. He sat across from me. Your father made some serious allegations, he said. I leaned forward slightly. And did you believe them? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he slid a document across the table. A property transfer record. The same kind I saw at the storage unit. Except this one wasn't stamped void. It was stamped. Reversed by court order. My grandfather's signature was on it. But underneath it, a second signature. A forensic verification seal. Meaning someone had already challenged the fraud. And lost. The detective watched my reaction closely, then said quietly, "This didn't start with you, did it?" I shook my head. No. And for the first time, someone in authority believed me. My phone was returned for one supervised call. I dialed Mr. Harrison. He answered immediately. "I think they moved faster than we expected," he said. "Your father filed emergency restraint filings on all inheritance assets." I closed my eyes. "So I'm frozen out?" "No," he replied. Then he paused. "That's the strange part. They didn't just freeze you out. They tried to reassign ownership." My grip tightened. And another pause. Then his voice dropped. "But they failed. Because your grandfather's structure didn't just protect assets. It mirrored them. Any illegal transfer attempt triggers automatic legal counterclaims. Filed in advance. Activated posthumously." I sat there stunned. "They activated his trap?" I asked. "Yes," he said. "And now they've been officially flagged." As I hung up, the detective stood up abruptly. His phone was ringing. He stepped out of the room. I could hear fragments through the door. "Yes, confirm the warrants." All 3 names. Then silence. He came back in slowly. And for the first time, he didn't look at me like a suspect. He looked at me like a witness. "Mr. Carter," he said carefully, "you're not under arrest anymore." My heart stopped. "Why?" I asked. He hesitated, then said the words that changed everything. "Because your father just got arrested." A beat. Then another. "And so did Daniel Brooks." But then he added something even worse. "However, they both claim they were protecting you from your grandfather." He slid another file onto the table. Stamped urgent. Top page read. "Request for Ethan Carter. Emergency testimony in major estate criminal case." I looked up. "Whose case?" The detective didn't answer immediately. He just said, "Your grandfather's." And that's when I realized the real investigation was only just beginning. The words didn't make sense at first. "Your grandfather's case." I stared at the detective, waiting for him to correct himself. He didn't. Instead, he slid the folder closer. At the top, in bold stamped letters, "State versus Richard Carter Estate Fraud Investigation." My grandfather's name. But underneath it, a second line I didn't expect. "Key witness, Ethan Carter." My throat went dry. "I'm the witness?" The detective nodded once. "According to this, you're not the accused. You're the trigger." That word hit harder than anything before it. Trigger. Like I wasn't part of the case. I was what set it in motion. They moved me to a private interview room. No cuffs. No guards. Just cameras in the corners. And silence that felt intentional. Then the detective placed a USB drive on the table. "This was recovered from your grandfather's legal archive," he said. "I thought I already saw everything," I replied. He shook his head. "You saw what he wanted you to see." That stopped me cold. "What does that mean?" He didn't answer. Instead, he nodded toward the screen. "Play it." The video loaded. But this one was different. Not the weak, older version of my grandfather. This was earlier. Healthier. Stronger. And angry. He leaned forward like he was speaking directly to me. "If you're watching this version, then things have escalated faster than I expected." My hands tightened around the chair. He continued. "Then, I need you to understand something your father will never admit." Pause. "Then, you were never just my heir." My heart slowed. "What does that mean?" I whispered to myself. On the screen he answered instantly. "You were my insurance." The detective muted the video. "For legal reasons," he said, "this next part requires explanation before you continue." I stared at him. "Go ahead." He opened the file. Inside was a document labeled Secondary Testamentary Structure. "Your grandfather didn't leave one will," he said. "He left multiple, layered depending on how the estate was challenged." I felt my stomach twist. "He anticipated conflict?" The detective nodded. "Not conflict. Collapse." He slid another page forward. "And in the highest level scenario, the entire estate becomes evidence." I blinked. "Evidence of what?" The detective finally looked at me directly. "Systematic financial manipulation by trusted family members." "My father. Daniel." the board member. All of it suddenly wasn't a fight over inheritance. It was a pre-built criminal case. Years in preparation. The door to the interview room opened suddenly. A uniformed officer stepped in, whispering something to the detective. His expression changed immediately. He turned back to me. "They've requested you be brought in for testimony immediately." "Who?" I asked. He hesitated. "Your mother." My body went still. "That's not possible," I said. "She's not part of this case." The detective shook his head. "She is now." He stood up. "And there's something else." He slid another file toward me. This one had been freshly printed. The ink still sharp. At the top, Emergency Family Hearing, Estate Oversight Board. My father's company board. My grandfather's company board. And legal representatives from both sides. But one detail stood out. My name was already listed under potential liability party. Not witness. Not victim. Liability. As I was escorted down the hallway, I saw them. My mother. Standing outside a conference room. Composed. Too composed. She didn't look surprised to see me. That was the first warning. Our eyes met briefly. She didn't speak. But she did something I didn't expect. She shook her head slightly. Not at me. At the detective behind me. Like she was warning him. Or warning me. Then she walked inside. The hearing room was massive. Too formal for something that started as a family dispute. Long table. Multiple legal teams. Recording devices everywhere. And at the center, a sealed box. Metal. Marked. Open only in presence of Ethan Carter. I stopped. The entire room watched me notice it. The lead legal counsel stood. "Mr. Carter," he said, "please take your seat." I didn't move. "What is that?" I asked. No one answered immediately. Then my father's lawyer spoke. "That contains the final directive of your grandfather's estate structure." I narrowed my eyes. "And why am I the only one allowed to open it?" Silence. Then the detective behind me spoke quietly. "Because if what we suspect is true, you are not just the heir. Pause. You are the executor." My breath caught. "That's impossible." But no one disagreed. That was worse. They placed the box in front of me. My hands shook as I reached for it. Before I could open it, the door to the room slammed open. A new officer entered urgently. He walked straight to the lead detective and whispered something. The detective's face drained. He turned toward me slowly. "What?" I asked. He hesitated. Then said, "The bank where your grandfather's vault was stored has been breached." My heart dropped. And another pause. "They didn't find documents. They found something else." He looked down at his notes. Then back at me. "A second identity file." I froze. "What kind of identity file?" He didn't answer immediately. Then said the words that broke everything I thought I knew. "A backup beneficiary record. And your name is not the only one on it." The room went silent. Even my father's legal team stopped moving. The detective stepped closer. "Mr. Carter." He hesitated. "There is someone else legally entitled to your grandfather's estate." I stared at him. "Who?" He opened the file and turned it toward me. There was a name. Highlighted. Certified. Verified. A person I had never heard of before in my life. And underneath it, a single line. "Day match confirmed." My hands went numb. But suddenly, the case wasn't about whether I was the heir. It was about whether I ever was the only one. The room didn't move. No one spoke. Even the air felt like it had frozen. The detective slowly turned the file back toward himself, as if reading it again would change what it said. But it didn't. Day match confirmed. And beneath it, a name I had never seen in my entire life. I looked up immediately. "This is a mistake," I said. No one responded. My mother was now standing inside the hearing room. I hadn't even noticed when she entered. Her face wasn't shocked. It was tired. Like she had been carrying this truth longer than I had been alive. The lead legal counsel finally broke the silence. "This was not supposed to be opened yet." I turned sharply. "What does that mean?" He exhaled slowly. "Your grandfather created a secondary lineage clause." Pause. Meaning, if his primary heir line was compromised, a backup beneficiary would be activated. My stomach dropped. Compromised by who? No one answered directly. But I already knew. My father. Daniel. The system they built. My mother finally spoke. Quietly. Ethan. Her voice shook slightly. I told him not to go this far. My eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? She looked at me. For the first time, no control. No mask. Just truth. You were never supposed to be alone in this inheritance structure. The detective slid the file back open. He pointed at the second name. This individual was born under a sealed trust arrangement. I leaned forward. What kind of arrangement? He hesitated. Then said it. Your grandfather financed a private relocation and identity protection program decades ago. My breath slowed. For who? My mother closed her eyes. And said the words I didn't expect. For your sibling. Silence. My mind refused to process it. That's not possible, I said. I don't have. But I stopped. Because I realized something terrifying. I didn't actually know everything about my family. Not even close. The detective stood up now. He walked to the sealed box in front of me. This box, he said, is not the final inheritance document. He tapped it lightly. It's the activation key. I stared at it. Activation for what? He looked at me directly. For the full estate reveal protocol. My father's lawyer suddenly stood. This is beyond procedure. But no one listened anymore. The system was already moving. The detective continued. Your grandfather anticipated exactly this situation. He predicted fraud, identity disputes, and even family fragmentation. Pause. And he built a resolution mechanism. I whispered. A mechanism? He nodded. One that only activates when both heirs are present. My heart pounded. Both heirs. He looked at the second name again. Yes. And they are both required to unlock the final directive. Before I could respond, the doors opened again. Hard. A man entered. Late 20s or early 30s. Confused. Breathing heavy. He looked around the room like he had been dragged there without explanation. Then his eyes locked onto mine. And something unexplainable happened. Not recognition. But instinct. Like looking into a mirror that had lived a different life. The detective stepped aside. Ethan Carter, he said. Meet your brother. My entire body froze. The room erupted in murmurs. My father stood up instantly. This is absurd, he shouted. But no one was listening anymore. Because the truth had already arrived. The legal counsel slowly pushed the sealed box forward. Gentlemen, he said carefully. According to protocol, both heirs must authorize opening. The new man looked at me. Confused. What is this? He asked quietly. I didn't have an answer. Because I was still processing the fact that I had a brother. My mother stepped forward. Her voice broke slightly. It's your grandfather's final instruction. Pause. And the truth about why everything was hidden. My hand moved first. Then his. Together. We placed our palms on the box seal. A soft click echoed through the room. Then another. The lock released. The box opened. Easy. No money. No documents. Only a single sealed letter. And a USB drive. The detective carefully lifted it out. And read the label aloud. The real will of Richard Carter. Silence again. Then the detective inserted it into the system screen. The video began instantly. My grandfather appeared on screen. But this time, fully aware this would be the final recording. He looked directly forward. At both of us. At this moment, he said calmly. You both now know enough to ask the right question. Pause. Not who gets what. But why I split everything at all. He leaned back slightly. And the answer is simple. My hands tightened. I did not build this empire to be inherited. He continued. I built it to be tested. The screen flickered slightly. Because power does not corrupt individuals. It reveals them. A long silence. Then his final words. If you are watching this together. Then the system worked. The video ended. The room stayed silent for nearly a minute. No one moved. No one spoke. Then the detective finally said. So, what now? I looked at my brother. He looked at me. And for the first time in this entire nightmare, there was no anger. only understanding. Because everything we thought we were fighting for was never the inheritance. It was the truth. And now we had it. My father was taken away that day. But not before shouting one last thing. You don't understand what he did to this family. Maybe he was right. Because as I walked out of that building, I realized something important. My grandfather didn't divide the family to destroy it. He divided it to reveal it. No. We were the only ones left standing in the truth he built. You liked this video, so please like and subscribe for more videos like this. Thank you.